Robby, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Great, fabulous. Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Got someone who's actually on my time zone, so it's a little bit easier to schedule. Sometimes these things go 3 hours away and hard, but definitely fellow Floridian for everyone who doesn't know. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everyone how you got into. We're going to be discussing HRV today, so tell everyone how you got into that field, that space, and just a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, my name is Robby Besner. I am the co-founder of Therasage. We are the premier, we're known as sort of the gold standard in infrared devices, full spectrum infrared devices, infrared saunas, healing pads, and a whole sundry of FDA cleared class 2 medical devices that are built around that. How I started with HRV was kind of just my own quest as a device developer. Oftentimes, as I'm inventing and developing devices, there's a lot of intuitive part of it, as you know, in me dreaming about a new product or a new device or a new application, and then there's the actual manifestation of that dream. So we have half a dozen factories that work for us in various parts of the world. And I've been doing this for more than 22 years. I spend most of my time coordinating factory activities, developing new techniques and devices, and then working on the health science integration. So we just don't make the device, we teach healthcare practitioners how to integrate that device in their practice to improve the efficacy of what they're doing. So along those lines, because we're working with allopathics, that's the MDs, and I don't know the viewers that we're talking to. Some could be doctors and some could just be lay people. So I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth with language to address all the full gambit.
Yep, absolutely. There will be both, so definitely
Perfect.
do that.
So in that vein, we always try to create what's called evidence-based technology. So it's not just that we make a device, we actually contract with third-party experts in different areas to test our devices to prove to the world, it could be just the general public and a very inquisitive customer, or more importantly, it could be the practitioner that's working with the chronically ill patient, and they want to make sure that the device does what it says it does and has all those clearances. So we've gone, actually our standards are even higher than the FDA, but the FDA is considered the sort of the cornerstone classification that is used globally to set a standard for medical devices. And so we meet all of FDA standards, and in fact, in some areas, we're actually do more testing and more things than even FDA requires. So my background is in engineering. I went to medical school, didn't finish and get my, I didn't get my MD, but I started in Case Western Reserve. I was in pre-med earlier than that in undergrad. And so I've sort of gathered all of my skill sets to put myself in a position now where I can easily talk to doctors, talk to regular people, and also use the other parts of my skill sets to manifest and develop devices that are used to help improve health naturally. We got started on this whole thing because 20 years ago, plus my daughter contracted Lyme disease. And when she got sick, we had means, so we went to the most educated and qualified Lyme literate doctors at the time. Now are considered the guys, the premier guys in the Lyme, all the Lyme associations. But way back then, or when, Lyme wasn't as profoundly hitting the general public as we're seeing now. So we had limited choices of doctors that were available and the kinds of tools that were available then to actually help with Lyme disease. So we got my daughter situated with the top doctor, and then I started working with her on the family side to manage her symptoms, which were pain, systemic toxicity, and inflammation. So coming back to the toxicity side, we discovered that there are frequencies of sunlight that actually mobilize all the toxins in your body. That's part of the infrared spectrum. And that got me on this whole journey to develop the infrared portfolio of devices that we currently sell and make. Now
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I love when it comes from pain to purpose. It's kind of where I'm at with my health coaching and health issues. I've been trying to figure out, I scored a great score on this HRV. I do all sorts of stuff that people would call biohacking or eating right, did every diet under the sun. And I just still wasn't feeling that well. And I've found out now that I had to remove some mercury fillings. I had some cavitations, and now I'm doing this heavy metal detox, which is why I ordered one of your saunas. But so, I was just soul searching and trying to figure out a way to just feel normal again and feel, I was doing so many things right and I just didn't feel well. I still had brain fog and was confused. And I still have some of those symptoms right now. I'm not all the way there, but I think a lot of people in this space, it stems from some form of instance like that.
Right. And we're seeing more of it in clinic these days because the world is getting more toxic as we speak. And so particularly if you live in an urban society, if you're eating, breathing, and drinking water, you're getting toxic every day. And then on top of that, we've just, they just brought out 5G networks and the amount of electromagnetic fields and that kind of radiation and that impact on the body is dialing up all of these genetic SNPs and some of the genetic, what is the word I'm looking for? It's like you're predisposed. You have some genetic tendencies, and you may never have ever seen them come up in your lifetime, except in these times because we're being influenced with all these exogenous stresses that many of these things are coming out. And we're seeing, guys in clinic that are 18 or younger with low testosterone and women at 14 years age that are coming in sterile and testing sterile. And that is not something that's genetic. It's more epigenetic, and it has a lot to do with our environment. And so the Therasage model and what we're doing there is just our little part in developing devices that help lower the threshold of inflammation and stress. And once we get your body in that position, then you have a fighting chance, given our environment these days. So back to HRV, because that's why we're here today.
Yeah, we'll get to that episode down the line once I use the sauna for a while. But today, for HRV, let's stick on track there.
Okay, so for HRV, what I do in order to prove that the efficacy of our devices is I use HRV as one of my tools. And why I do that, HRV stands for heart rate variability. And to give the viewers a little understanding, a small background on it, this entire technology, the category of this technology started in the 1960s when the US and the Russians were competing to see what country could keep their submarine sailors, submerged without their bodies starting to decompose the longest. Okay, what country could keep their submarine sailors in the submarines underwater the longest without there being a physiological detriment? So we were able to do it for 2 weeks.
I don't understand.
And
you want to know how long can a nuclear subspace emerge?
Yes, thank you, Google.
I aim to please.
My Google aims to please. Anyway, I didn't ask it for that, but thank it anyway. The Russians were able to keep their sailors underwater for 100 days. And the reason why they were able to do it was because they invented heart rate variability. And heart rate variability has a way of actually calibrating using an ECG, which is a monitor of your heart, your electrocardiogram is what that stands for. And so there are various different ways to gather that information. The format that we use uses these little wrist clips. They look like this. And then you take the clip, and it's got a little sensor in here, and you just basically clip it on your wrist. And now it's able to get a pulse from here, and then you get a pulse from this side. And then in 5 minutes or less, we can take a complete data feed read, live read of what your heart, how your heart is functioning. So heart rate variability, it's measuring the variable time sequences between your heartbeats as the heart is beating and moving the blood from auricle to ventricle, and then eventually circulating through your body. There's a synapse or a certain amount of time difference.
So why is that time difference important to know for anyone?
Well, for the viewers, just imagine if you're in a sympathetic mode, as most people are these days. Sympathetic being your autonomic nervous system has sympathetic and parasympathetic readings, and that comes basically from your brain. Now, when you're in sympathetic mode, it's called fight or flight. You're always on your edge. You're being visually stimulated, audio stimulated, all the things that are around us, including electromagnetic fields. These different types of frequencies, the way that we interpret that, our bodies interpret that, it puts us on edge. It makes us anxious. And that's actually most of the time. Now, as opposed to the people that live, you know, on like out in Bali on an island, and they're just hearing the ocean in the background. Or my son is an organic farmer and he lives in Michigan. And if you go out to his house, it's so quiet after 3 days, you can hear your hair grow. Or more importantly, you can actually hear the wind rustling over the cornfields. And so that is a very different type, two different major contrasts, right? And so for my son, he's basically kind of cool, calm, and always like beaming along. When you deal with the other side, now you're looking at people on the 405 in California that get stuck in traffic, and they're so outraged they want to pull a gun and either shoot themselves or the people driving next to them. So that's the contrast. Now, how does that be interpreted by your heart? When you're in fight and flight, imagine when you're anxious or if you got scared, all of a sudden your heart starts beating really fast, right? And then when you calm down, your heart goes back to its normal beat. So what we're measuring is that difference. When you're young and you have a healthy heart and a healthy autonomic nervous system, then your body or your heart adjusts very quickly from an agitated or an aggravated or an anxious state to a normal state. As you get older, that ability to transfer from anxious to calm starts to diminish. And so what heart rate variability does is it measures all of that. And then in a nifty way, we've created modules where we have different algorithmic, which are mathematical equations that take the raw data of the ECG and translates that into indexes. So we're going to walk through that in a few minutes together, but that's basically the background behind all of this. Why I got into it is because I have in 5 minutes or less, I can do a baseline scan of myself. I can jump into one of my infrared saunas, use it for a half hour, then do another HRV when I come out of it. And I can actually prove to myself and to a customer or a patient that being in that sauna for half an hour has affected my physiology in a multitude of ways. And it's actually measurable. And what's really nifty about the software that we created is that we can do a side-by-side. So I can do 2 scans and I can show you before and after. And that could be applied to anything that affects our bodies. So it could be sauna, your experiences with a very high-end company called Pulse Centers, and they use the device called, their device is a PEMF or pulsed electromagnetic fields. And so they use that device on you, and you measured yourself before and after, and you saw a change. You saw a dial, your needle moved. And so when you're really healthy and you're young, the needle doesn't move that much because you're already should be in top shape. As you get older, that needle moves a lot further. And for me, it's kind of interesting because there's one calibration we do where we actually measure your biological age. And so that's kind of like the ultimate in understanding what anti-aging is. So when you're doing, living a good lifestyle, getting sleep, meditating, eating clean, getting, touching the earth and doing all these things that are consciously keeping you in the best shape that you can be, you start to, as you get older, your biological age actually starts to come down, which is proving that your anti-aging efforts are actually going in the right direction. We have people the other way too, where people are not taking care of themselves and their biological age is actually older than their physical age. And those are the guys that we have to kind of work with and set up protocols and get them give them the tools that they need to move into a more positive direction. And ultimately, all we're doing, Matt, is trying to have people realize their potential. Their optimal health, they live healthy to the end, and they live a full life, and they can follow their bliss and contribute to their families, their church, their passion, their businesses, their community. These are all the goals that we're going for ultimately. So
yeah, it makes sense, because I've learned over these past few years with my own health issues that if you don't feel well, nothing else really matters. You can't really contribute in the way that you want to. I do this podcast, I do a few things, but I'm nowhere near what I want to be because I'm still trying to heal myself. I can't put forth the full effort when some days I just want to lay on the couch because I'm kind of fatigued from the detox or stuff like that. And it just wears on you. And I've told my fiance a million times, like I got to heal myself to be able to heal anyone else or to contribute in a way that I want to, because when your health is stripped from you, that is all you are worried about day in and day out, is trying to feel better.
Exactly. So that's our goals at my company. We just don't make devices. We also instruct either the patient, the customer, or the doctor who tells the patient or customer, the best practices in order for them to achieve their goals.
Awesome. So where can people actually find this, before we break it down? Where can people find these HRV programs that you've made personally? They can
on our website and they can purchase it.
Oh, okay.
And we do instructionals. So it's not just that you get the HRV and that's it. And then later on, as you'll see in the program, there's a final report. And so what's really interesting is that the patient or the customer, they get a report. So I get to take this report home to my wife and say, hey, I just spent a few $100s at the practitioner and I got this therapy done and I got this report. Take a look at what it's doing for me. People can actually see how this intervention, how this, medical practice or whatever that was done, how it's actually affecting them. Matt, that's a very different discussion than the TV commercials we see now on, from the drug companies that say, take this drug with a really cute name, it does this, and then spends the next 10 minutes telling you basically how you're going to go blind, you could possibly die, you lose organ function, blah, 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 right? And so I'm sort of taking a little jab at the pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not doing this with a bias. I'm just reporting this to you. So I don't sit in judgment. I think that there's a place for pharmaceuticals in the world of healthcare. But what I'm showing you now isn't like a double-blind study. It's actually what that drug or what that device or whatever it is that we're studying, how that is affecting you. It's not the 100 or the 1,000 of people that the drug companies use for their clinical trials. This is how it's affecting you. And that's different information, which I think is real information, because ultimately the drug companies and or the supplements or even the foods companies that whatever you put inside your body, they just give you indications of what it's supposed to do. Okay? And so it's always nice to know what it is doing. And HRV tells you that. And it doesn't lie, because your autonomic nervous system, your heart rate, your brain activity, that, it's influenced by stimulus, but the reports we get are truthful, because you can't influence your autonomic nervous system. This runs on its own. So it's really just the consummate of all this information. And what we've done is taken that information, and now we've just created all these different indices that can measure your stress and measure your brain function and your heart function, and put it all together in a general health, so you can see real improvements changing. And I'd like to take this opportunity to actually share our screen, and then from that we can actually learn together basically what I'm talking about.
Sounds good, man. That's why we use this program. And I'm going to let you kind of lecture through some of this stuff and I'll hop in here and there, but you're the expert.
Okay. So, alrighty. So I'm going to share the screen. Alrighty. Let me just shrink this guy down a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just basically going to launch the heart rate variability program. We call it Heart Scientific, by the way. Can you see that screen okay?
Yeah. It's a little small. You could probably make it a little bit bigger, but overall I can read it pretty well.
All righty. So let's take a look. How's that? Is that better for you?
Yep.
All righty. So this is actually, these are on the left side here are just some of the patients and customers. So try not to pay attention to those names because, well, I don't want to break any HIPAA rules of conventional rules for healthcare. So we're not going to get involved in any of those scans, but I will share mine with you because I'm giving myself permission to do that. All righty. So what you're seeing here is basically the first panel that you would see. And on the bottom here, it's sort of a global view. It says adaptation, vegetation regulation, neurohormonal regulation, physio-emotional state, and complex state. And these panels are running live and the dials are moving up and the percentages are changing as I'm doing a scan. So what I'm going to show you is here, and this the top screen here shows you what my heart rate looks like. And then here is the resting heart rate number. Again, if you were doing the scan, as you're doing the scan, that number is jumping around and then it gives you your overall average. So my resting heart rate is 62 beats per minute. And the RR is the total number of pulses that are coming from my heart, which is different than your heart rate. Over here, you have just a scan that shows you the efficacy of the readout. And this one comes in at 68% reliable. So what we're doing now and what these little lines are, the black lines show you good data. The red lines are called artifacts, and that's information that happens if through movement, or if I move in the chair, or if the lead on my wrist doesn't get a proper read. The program itself has what's called artificial intelligence built in. And the first 30 seconds of the scan, it kind of takes a read on you, Matt, and it says, what does Matt's ECG look like, supposed to look like in terms of a range of the times of your beat? And when there is a data feed or a piece of data that's outside that broad range, then it throws that data out, because other than that, it would mess up all the arithmetic derivations that we do further on. So we kind of clean the data while we're taking the read. Reliability, I'd love to see 80 to 100%. So 68 is acceptable. Anything above 50% is acceptable. But you'll see some scans later that'll show you that are higher reliability. It's not the end of the world, but I would like a reliability scan that's a little bit better. Anyway, so now we're going to go to the next screen. And here we have one that's called attention index. And the screens are a split screen, as you can see. And to the right on each panel, we also have a screen that's an informational screen. And so this is sort of a tutorial. So if I were a clinician and I wasn't familiar with Heart Scientific or HRV, I could do a scan on UMAT, and then I could grab the tutorial in the other pane, and then get a feel for what I got on a reading on you, and then how does that compare with either what's extremely high or extremely low in terms of the range. So it gives the person reading the read to the customer or the patient a pretty good understanding of what it's going to do. So then the other way we can do it is we can take this panel, and rather than it being informational, we can compare it to an earlier read. So I'm going to go back. This read was taken on January 12th. So let's just do before and after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this one as my latest screen, and then I'm going to go back to a screen that's before that. So on November 19th at 8 or 9 in the morning, I did this run. So now we have and you can do this, you can compare any screen to any screen, the first to the third, the second to the fifth, the ninth to the 100th. So imagine if you were a doctor and I was your doctor, you came in and I treated you. In the beginning of the month, I did a scan on you. And I said, hey, let's shift your diet to a keto diet for the next 30 days and see how your body responds. Then you come in at the end of 30 days, and then I do another scan on you. And now I can do the beginning of the month and the end of the month and compare exactly how your body has responded based on that diet change. Okay? So think about the multitude of ways that this can be applied, right? Keep in mind what I'm a device developer, and so I'm always looking to try to prove some way that what I'm doing actually does what it does, right? And so that's my purpose. But there are a lot of applications, including for people that are looking for optimal health. You know, one thing that's interesting to me is, you know, especially here in the Western society in the US, we have a sense to a way of sort of looking to homogenize people. Everybody in gym class do 100 sit-ups. Everybody do 20 push-ups, right? Well, the 20 push-ups I do is going to affect my body differently than yours. And what HRV can do is it can show you where your peak performance is. And so there is something in people that are weekend warriors that you can overtrain your body and there's a diminishing return. So if I could use HRV to show you where your maximum peak performance is, which your peak performance is different than mine, right? And so I may peak after 20 minutes and you might peak after 40 minutes. So if I were to work out for 40 minutes, the extra 20 minutes, actually, I'm starting to break down muscle and it starts working against me. And so my best thing would be to know where my peak was, stop at my peak, then go into recovery mode and so forth, right? So that's another application for HRV. Anyway, so you can see here, I have everything is color coded. So it goes from green to red. So the clinician can look at this and say, wow, it's a yellow. And the yellow, what we've done is we've created an index. And the information that we're using, there's more than 20,000 studies that are in this database. And so what we do is we create an index, and the index is the parameters of the index is the information that's being given to us by the Heart Association. And it's the same data that every hospital and every clinic everywhere in the world uses these parameters as their standard. Okay? So tension index, well, tension gets kind of a funny word, is a funny word. And so, so what happens is that basically tension is a index that measures stress. And you can look at it as, and you've heard the term, I'm stressed out, right? So we look at tension in a different way with HRV. With the body wants to kind of maintain sort of a sense of normality. A technical term is homeostasis. And it's sort of like you go into a tunnel, and when you come out the other end of the tunnel, whether it's a workout or a meal or just your normal day, the body and the brain's job is to try to look at all the variables that are going on, all the stimuluses, all the information, all the food that's in you, all the medication that's in you, and so forth, and constantly recalibrate so that when you come out the other end of that tunnel, it's sort of normal, whatever that normal is for you, okay? And so when you're stressed out, you use a lot of energy to try to get normal, to be normal, normalized brain, normalized heart function, and all that. And so I would expect when on my panel, when I have a high stress number, that I have a low energy number because my body is using a lot of energy to try to maintain balance. Okay, conversely, when I have a low stress index, I should have high power, which we're going to see the result in the next panel over. And so here, the range is from 10 to 100. The reason why it's yellow is because my number score came in at 143. And here you see on the more current one, my stress was pretty low. It was at 38, right? Going down to the next panel, this is called a scatogram. And here, what you like to see is kind of a nice spread out data points. And so because my stress is low, my vegetative index or my heart rhythm, the calm heart rhythm is scattered, it's normal, and it's very healthy. Now look at the one where my vegetative and heart rhythm is the number's 23, which is just below the low end of the scale, 0.25 to 0.60, right? And here you see it's much more consolidated, much more dense. It's a very different look, right?
Right.
So that's the way you would look at that. So now if we go to the next panel, here we go, total power. Remember, we had a low stress number. The power number is, the range is between 2385 and 4545. And I'm at the top end of the range here at 45, almost 4500, right? So remember, low stress, high power. And here, my power number is 1020, which is almost 1,000 points, a little more than 1,000 points under the low end of the range. So high stress, low power. Got it?
And that's just like your total energy you have for throughout the day to
Yeah.
use, or
It's
so
your
basically,
resources. Imagine it being like, you know, the amount of bullets you have in for your gun. You
yeah,
know?
awesome. Because mine's at 8,000, and then it was actually at 90, almost 9,200 after the PEMF. Super high.
Yeah. So that's an awesome beginning, and it's hard to believe that even a total power at 8,000 could be any higher, you mentioned, but obviously yours was, and that's a remarkable score.
Yeah, it's awesome.
The other reads that we see here are the sympathetic, which is your primary sympathetic number, and then you have your secondary sympathetic number, and then you have your parasympathetic. That's your calm state. So when I was low stress, my primary sympathetic number, that's the fight and flight, was at 24%. When I was stressed out, my number was 65. It's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then as we move into parasympathetic, my number goes up to 68. So here I'm showing you that when I've got low stress, I also have a calm state in my brain. And here it's just the opposite with this guy, right?
Yep.
So then on vegetative balance, low stress number here, my balance is pretty high. It's right in the middle of the range, 77, and here it's extremely high. You know, my balance is way off, which is 240. That's almost 100 points higher than the high end of the range.
What are we showing here? What exactly is this?
This is another index. Well, the vegetative balance is just basically your calm state. And now take a look at the colors. That's kind of interesting because we do graphics that make it easy. So you see there's way more of the pie shape here, right? Right?
Yep. Yep.
And let's just look at the tutorial to compare it. So, you know, when we love it to be equal shapes of the pie, right? And so in this case, mostly activated my VLF, which is the secondary state of your parasympathetic mode. If we look at this guy, you can see that I've got mostly LF, which is your sympathetic. That's where you're in fight and flight. So these are very different reads. But you see how easy it is to flip back and forth with the tutorial piece and how important.
Very user friendly.
Yeah. And so now look at this guy. You see all the blues and greens in here? That's your optimal result. And so I'm somewhere between these two scales, right?
Yep.
People that are stressed out are going to be here with a lot of reds and oranges. Alrighty. And then again, the vitality index is another way to look at total power or total health. And here we're about, what, almost 30% stronger. The index is 63.8, and here it's 41.7. So this is another view. This one's pretty interesting. It's your neurohormonal regulation. So this has to do with the interaction between your heart and your brain and your pituitary gland that sends out your hormones that basically balance your body. So what we want to see are a lot of greens and blues, like here. Less here, you see more oranges and yellows. So it's got a whole different look to it. And the ranges, again, to give you a feel for it, between 50 and 100, I'm at 68, and here I'm just below at 48. But this one down here is particularly interesting because the numbers here are showing you it's sort of like what you want to see is something that looks kind of like a Lego set
Yeah,
that's
that's how mine looks.
nice and
They're
broad and stout. When it kind of looks more like the Empire State Building like this, that's going the other way. Okay.
all right.
So this screen shows you energy. It's your energy pyramid, and it shows you power in versus power out. The amount of energy balance. So how much power am I putting into my body, and what am I getting out of it? And so even in this case, where I had a really good read on the stress index, I'm still in burnout mode because I'm putting in 107 and I'm getting out 81. If you look at yours, you're probably putting in maybe 120 and you're getting 140 or 160.
So it's the well, before the PEMF it was 244 and then 185, and then the second read was 257 and 215.
215. So you're still at an energy deficit, but your numbers are almost double mine. How old are you, Matt?
I'm we'll be 32 here soon.
Okay, cool. I'm 66.
So
So that's why our scales are different, you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
and that'll express itself, like I said earlier, the younger you are, the usually the better the scores are, unless you, of course, have some genetic disposition or things like that. So now we're going to switch to the brain screen. So here's a brain that's kind of showing some stress, right? And it's at 46, which is below the 50 number. And you can see areas of my lobes that are showing stress. And here's a brain that is a little bit healthier. Still a little stress in my cortex there, but the number comes in at 73. Let's look at what a healthy brain should be, all blue. And so these areas of stress are interesting because these are your cortisol levels as they start to shift, and your activity, like the different parts of your brain does different things. So, and then down here, this is an interesting range because this shows you the actual numbers. Beta 1 and 2 is your sympathetic. Then alpha is your parasympathetic. Theta is sort of your dream state, and delta is your repair mode. Okay? So if we were studying sleep, delta would be considered your REM sleep. And so in this instant, I just came off of a workout, and so my body was calm. I had a good alpha number, and I was already setting up my body was already in repair mode. When I was stressed out, look at all that activity. Look how much of my sympathetic dominance I had. Most of my brain waves are sitting right in here, and so it looks very different, right?
Yeah. So my alpha went down drastically after the PEMF. So it was at 36%, and the beta was at 40%. But then after I did the treatment, my alpha went down to 17 and the beta went up to 67.
Okay. So that was your body and nervous system responding to the stimulus of the PEMF. Bam, bam, bam. He's hitting you with frequencies, and your body is getting very stimulated, which is really the basis of how that device works. That stimulation and that pulsing of the EMF is causing vasodilation and bringing more oxygen to move around and more blood supply. But in the process of doing that, it's shifting you into sympathetic mode because you're getting, basically shocked. You're getting pulsed. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually drank coffee on the way because I didn't even know I was getting this test done. So my first recording could be a little bit skewed by that as well.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we're going to shift to a structural design of what my spine looks like. So again, we want to see as blues if we can everywhere. And if you look at yours, they're probably all blue.
Yeah, they're all blue.
Right. So with me, when I was stressed out, I had yellows, and I guess the darker yellow or red would be indicating where I have compression. And so on the healthier scan, now I've got a healthy brain that's giving healthy communication down my spinal cord all the way, which is now feeding every part of my body, both my muscular system and all my organs. And so the better the connection between your brain and your spinal cord and then your nervous system, the better your body functions. Simple as that. Okay.
Yeah, I thought this one was really interesting. I was like, man, he's breaking it down to how your organs are functioning and stuff. That's cool.
Yep. Okay, so now we get to have really more fun. When I was stressed out, again, I'm 66, my biological age was 10 years younger. So my bio age is 56. When I was calm, my bio age was 24 years younger.
Wow.
My body is 42 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Mine was 24, actually. So I mean, I don't know how young a 31-year-old can go down, but at least I was 24.
The fact that you're actually moving that needle at all on your bio age is amazing to me.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's cool.
People
my age usually can't move it down.
The younger you are, the harder. I can't move a 20-year-old to, what am I going to move them to? 19 and a half?
Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, I didn't know if it would keep going down, or I mean, 24 is a perfect age. I feel like if I was 24 forever, I'd be great.
Okay, so that's a good goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
What about this harmonization that's going on? What is that? Anything
really
important?
Brain function again. Let's take a look at, see, look at what I am. This shows that all of my lobes of my brain are communicating pretty well. And it looks more kind of like that guy right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As opposed to, these are brains that are not functioning all that well. And so if you take a look at this guy, you see a little bit less activity. This is really a more rich picture.
It's awesome.
Okay. All right, so now these are the fun ones. Down on the bottom here, this is the total health number. So this is pretty cool. So now I do this intervention. So look at my total health. I went from 47% to 77%. So that's sort of an aggregate number of all the screens before it. So, and then it also expresses itself up in here with the different pie shapes. So if we look at it, what ultimately we want all the pies to be equally distributed and full, right?
Right.
So in this instant, when I'm stressed out, I have equal distribution, but my slices are small, right?
Right.
And they're much, more even, and also the slices are bigger. So that's what you look for there.
That's cool.
Yep, this screen, you don't have probably a lot of data for the screen because you need more data in order for it to populate. But it basically shows me that I've got 51 scans in this portfolio right now. So it's giving me an overall trend of my health. So that's kind of cool, right? The averages of these different numbers.
That's what I think is interesting here, even as like a health coach, health practitioner. I mean, maybe even if you were kind of like an advanced personal trainer, especially with like athletes or anything, if you could just keep all of these scores every certain amount of time, you'd really notice what would be if you were working out too hard, if you weren't working out hard enough, if you weren't sleeping, you would really be able to track everything so fantastic. It'd be amazing.
Yep, that's exactly the idea behind it. All right, I just want to stay conscious of the time.
Absolutely.
This is my biorhythm, okay, and it's based on my last scan. So you can see like at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m. I'm kind of at a low. So that's when I wouldn't want my power meetings. I wouldn't want to be working out. I wouldn't get the best workout in the gym. And my peak performances are 7 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. So it's a nice way to see how you're looking at heart rate, you're looking at hormonal distribution and brain activity. And so you can get a biorhythm that you can get a feel for exactly how to plan your day, when to take your power nap, when to, if you're sleeping in, if your sleep habits are changing, how do you account for that? The next couple of screens are really interesting too. This one measures your aura. So again, you can look at a tutorial and you can read all about what that means, but I don't want to spend time on that right now for the audience. And it does give you a value, so it does correlate with your total overall picture. So if you remember, I was at 70%, 77% total health, and 47. So the aura reflects your total health. Okay. And here we're measuring your chakras. And so if you're at all familiar with the Ayurvedic approach to medicine, you have all these different energy zones. So there are 3, 6, 7 that we're measuring. And based on it's called fractal analysis. Based on our algorithm, we can actually show you the energy that's being distributed in each of your chakras. And so why is that important? Because if I looked at my history, generally this chakra for me is always at a deficit. And so if you take a look at it, it's the activity around the genitals, the celiac complexes, and your lower abdomen organs. And so you can read what all these chakras do and what organs they're related to. And then that would be areas where if I had supplementation or if I had body work done, I'd want to concentrate on these areas where I'm obviously showing some kind of an average deficit. The other thing the program does is it generates a harmonic. So if you click on that, I'm generating a actual tone that you can download to your phone, and you can run that and it balances out your chakras. So it's a little additive.
It's awesome. Meditation and yoga and stuff do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then this last screen panel is to do with your energy meridians from like acupuncture, and there we have another total power reference, which is another index. So when I was stressed, my total power was 1043. When I was calm and stronger, my total power was 4608. Again, these are measurable indices, and so we can show real change based on what you're doing. And then again, these are the different meridians, and so you can take a look at the what each of them are. So it's everything from your heart to your pancreas, stomach, large intestine. And so if I was an acupuncturist or an acupressurist, I would know exactly what areas need some adjustment. The red comes up a lot for me. That's my heart chakra. And the greens are the healthiest, the yellows are less, and the reds are the ones to pay attention to. So that's basically how you look at that. So you can see here, when I was stressed out, I had a lot of meridians that needed adjustment or needed what I call love. When I was less stressed out, my meridians all read pretty strong, but yet my heart was the one that still was the weakest. So that's my tendency, and I have to pay attention to that. Now, as a customer or a patient, basically you get a printout of all of these different screens and the report card, the comparative report card. So it's easy for you to keep track of how your physiology is changing throughout a protocol or an intervention. The last screen is more for the practitioner, and here there are the numerical values. So this is what your scan was. It also shows you the yellows and the reds indicating what areas need love. And then on the norms are here. So, and these are the titles. And again, there is an information that gives you the name of each of these acronyms. And then further on in our trainings, we indicate which ones they are. So this report just the clinician gets. And we have created a service, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but we have a Therascan service that the practitioner can upload this report. They can send it directly to our team within 24 hours, like a lab test. We turn this report around, and we've got a team of 5 cardiologists that have been reading HRVs for about 10 years or more. They've done tens of thousands of scans, and they will send back a report giving you a diagnosis, giving you a treatment plan, giving you supplementation, the various different things that you might need to do in order for you to improve your health. So that's my initial precursory look here at the HRV. Let me shift back. Do you have any questions about any of this right now?
I was thinking as if I was a practitioner or health coach, or I'm not sure exactly if you're only taking practitioners or whatever, but how does one get trained by your company to be able to analyze all of this?
Well, the first thing, you buy the equipment, and then we get it installed. And then during the install, within a week or two, we ask for you to just set an appointment with my staff. And then generally it'll be me or one of one of my trained technicians that will walk you through. We also have video trainings that walk you through so that we can offer that first, so people can get a hang for it. To take the actual report is very little, very little training. Anybody can do it. You just have to get the machine set up, get a dedicated, you don't even need a dedicated PC, but you just install it in a PC, you run the scan. Reading the scan takes a little bit more of an art form. What we did was we created Therascan, the service, just for the practitioners that want to get started, but they don't necessarily want to learn the new system right away. And then over time they can, it's just a pay-as-you-go setup. There's no extra charge for it. You just charged as you go. And so for the practitioners that really want to dial in, they can learn from our team, and then over time they get the knack of it. And then if they've got questions, they certainly can call me. For the ones that some doctors don't even want to care for it, about it, they just want to pay for the service and run the scan. They have a PA, an assistant in the practice that runs the scan. They send the scan to us. We send the report back. They add that to the patient's chart. And then when they do, the doctor sits down with the patient at their next consult. Then they may go over, all this information to give them a overall read as what to do.
Awesome. Great information.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now and go back to our join screen.
Awesome.
And I'm pretty much done with this part of that HRV. So if you're happy with this, we've just been just about under an hour.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. I think it was great. I think most people only hear HRV and think of maybe like the Aura Ring, or I think like the Whoop is like a watch that people watch. But this is definitely, when I got this report, I'm like, this is much more than just seeing your HRV as a number every morning.
Yeah, and by the way, the Aura Ring is great technology.
Yeah.
But it's what's called static, which means you have a ring on and it's taking a snapshot. What I'm doing is I'm running real-time data, getting your real-time heart movement over a 5-minute period. And we instruct the patient to kind of sit calmly, comfortably and calmly. But certainly if you came, to my practice, and on the way over you were in a traffic jam and you got all stressed out on the way to our session, that's going to affect your report and the way your read is going to go. Like you said, you drank a healthy cup of coffee. That stimulant is going to affect your HRV. So even though I'll calm you down, that will have and I would make a notation in your chart that you had a fight with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, or you drank a stimulant beforehand, and we'll just take that into account so that when we get the readout, we'll go, okay, this seems, and that's really another reason why, Matt, honestly, the more scans we get, the better I can color in your tapestry. And so we know which ones are the outliers, which ones are the ones to disregard because there was some exogenous influence that affected you that day.
Awesome. Well, let everyone know where they can find you, your work, how maybe purchase the HRV, all of that good stuff.
Well, the best thing to do is to go to my website, which you can get to by www.therasage, spelled THERASAGE.com. And then just click around where it says shop and you can see HRV or Heart Scientific there. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you can go to our 800 number, which is 888-416-4441, and either ask for me or leave a message in the general mailbox. Or you can write us at info, I-N-F-O, at Therasage, spelled THERASAGE.com. And then we can respond to you. We can set up an appointment, ask any questions you may have. There are lots of systems out there, and they vary in range and prices and so forth. We try to keep our price low for the practitioner so that he can get in his practice and add this to his genre of other ways that he tests the patient and so forth. Remember, we're giving you a response right away. You're not waiting a week for a lab report to come back, a blood test or anything like that. You know, almost Johnny on the spot, what's going on for you. Again, if you're looking to do something like see how my diet affects me over the month, that's a different story. But we can actually track your health progress, and that's so important in the world that we're living in these days because there are so many influences, there are so many things that affect us emotionally, physically, chemically, environmentally, and so forth. that it's kind of important to have tools like this that kind of keep us on track so that we can fine tune and just look. It got the Russians to keep their sailors underwater for 100 days, and we could hardly keep them there for 10. So right there alone, you get a feel for how important having this kind of technology as a tool at your fingertips.
Awesome. Thank you so much for breaking down the information today. I will link to this video. I'll post this video and I will link to it in the show notes if people want to watch it and go over it, because obviously a lot of the time you're talking about what's on the screen. So it might be more beneficial to just see the video. But I'll link to the website, the phone number, everything, so they can contact you if need be as well.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the next session, and then we can talk about infrared and other kinds of fun things that we're doing here at Therasage.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.